The midday sun beat down on the sprawling military base, baking the concrete and filling the air with the familiar scent of jet fuel and hot asphalt. Colonel Harrison, Harry Thorne, a man whose reputation was carved from 25 years of service in a family tree heavy with military brass, strode across the parade ground with the confidence of a man who owned the world he surveyed. His uniform was crisp, his boots shone like mirrors, and the silver eagle on his shoulder board seemed to gleam with a life of its own. He was headed to the base's main administrative building for a routine briefing, a task he considered beneath him, but a necessary evil of command. As he approached the entrance, his attention was drawn to a figure standing by the flagpole, seemingly absorbed in reading the inscription on the base's memorial stone. It was a woman, perhaps in her late 40s, dressed in what he immediately dismissed as a rather disheveled and wholly inappropriate outfit for a military installation. She wore a simple, lightweight civilian blouse and a pair of practical, well-worn trousers. A worn leather satchel was slung over her shoulder, and a faded baseball cap bearing no insignia he could discern shielded her eyes from the sun. Thorne's lip curled slightly. Civilians on his base, probably some professor from the local community college here for a consultation, or worse, a reporter. He despised reporters. They always got in the way, asked the wrong questions, and understood nothing of the sacrifice and discipline that built an institution like this. He was about to walk past her, dismissing her as utterly irrelevant, when a thought, sharp and officious, one pricked at him. It was his duty, his divine right as the base commander, to ensure standards were maintained. This woman's casual appearance was an affront to the order he had so carefully cultivated. He changed course, his pace brisk and purposeful, his heels clicking a sharp rhythm on the pavement. "Excuse me," he barked, his voice carrying the clipped, authoritative tone that made junior officers stammer and enlisted personnel snap to attention. The woman at the memorial turned slowly. Her face was calm, unlined despite her years, with intelligent, observant eyes that held a depth Thorne couldn't quite place. She removed her baseball cap, revealing hair pulled back in a simple, neat ponytail. "Yes," she asked, her voice quiet and even, utterly devoid of the fluster or deference Thorne was accustomed to receiving. "This is a restricted military installation," Thorne began, his hands resting on his hips, a posture of pure authority. "Civilians are not permitted to wander about unescorted. May I ask what your business is here?" He didn't ask for her name. He didn't need it. She was a problem to be solved, a variable to be removed. The woman offered a small, almost apologetic smile. "I'm here for meetings, with the base operations director, actually," Thorne scoffed. "Meetings? Dressed like that?" He let his gaze travel over her outfit, his disapproval palpable. "We have protocols here, standards of dress and decorum. This isn't a public park. If you have business here, you should be in the visitors center, checking in, and you should be wearing attire that shows some respect for a United States military facility." The woman's smile didn't waver, but her eyes grew a fraction cooler. "I appreciate your concern for protocol, but my attire is perfectly suitable for the nature of my visit. It's quite warm, and I have a long journey ahead of me after these meetings." Thorne saw this as defiance, and his patience, already thin, evaporated. "Your comfort is not the base's concern, madam. I am Colonel Harrison Thorne, the commanding officer of this installation, and I am telling you that you cannot simply walk around here as you please. I will personally escort you to the visitors center myself to ensure you are properly processed, and I will be having a word with the director's office about allowing unescorted civilians onto the base without proper oversight." He took a step forward, as if to physically steer her towards the visitors center. It was a power play, a display of dominance. But the woman didn't move. She simply stood her ground, holding his gaze with a quiet, unnerving steadiness. "That won't be necessary, Colonel," a new voice interjected. Both Thorne and the woman turned. Emerging from the administrative building at a near trot was Brigadier General Marcus Welby, the base's operations director and, more importantly, Thorne's immediate superior. His face was a mask of barely contained horror. Welby reached them, slightly out of breath. He ignored Thorne completely, his focus entirely on the woman. He came to a sharp, respectful halt and snapped the most precise salute Thorne had ever seen him give. "General Kapoor," Welby said, his voice filled with deference, "my sincere apologies for the delay. I was just in a coordination meeting and didn't realize you had already arrived on the ground. We are deeply honored to have you here." Thorne felt the world tilt on its axis. The word general ricocheted around his brain, refusing to settle. He stared, dumbfounded, at the woman in the civilian clothes, the woman who had just been reprimanded for her attire. Lieutenant General Anya Kapoor returned General Welby's salute with an easy, practiced grace. "No apologies necessary, Marcus. I'm a bit early. I wanted a moment of quiet before we began." Her voice was now filled with a different kind of authority, a quiet command that needed no barking to be felt. Welby turned to Thorne, his expression shifting from deference to a cold, hard anger. "Colonel Thorne, may I present Lieutenant General Anya Kapoor, Deputy Commander of United States Army Pacific Command." The words hung in the air, heavy and damning. Lieutenant General, 3 stars, a rank so far above his own that it wasn't just a difference in grade, it was a difference in universe. Thorne, a full-bird colonel, had just publicly dressed down a 3-star general for her attire. The blood drained from his face, leaving him pale and clammy beneath the hot sun. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His perfectly rehearsed authority had evaporated, leaving him looking exactly like what he was, a man who had made a catastrophic, career-defining mistake. General Kapoor watched him, her expression unreadable. The silence stretched, agonizingly long. Finally she spoke, her tone gentle, almost pitying. "Colonel Thorne, you have a very impressive parade ground. Your attention to detail is notable." She gestured towards the memorial stone. "This is a beautiful tribute. I was just reading the names. It's important to remember that true respect for an institution isn't always worn on one's sleeve or in the crease of one's trousers. It's found in the substance of one's service." She turned back to a mortified General Welby. "Shall we, Marcus? I believe we have a great deal to discuss about the logistical challenges in the Pacific Theater." Welby nodded, casting a final withering glare at Thorne that promised a conversation he would not soon forget. As they walked away, Thorne stood rooted to the spot, the full weight of his arrogance crashing down upon him. He had seen a woman in casual clothes and made 1,000 assumptions, each one a brick in the wall of his own humiliation. One, he had judged a book by its cover, and the cover was hiding a 3-star epic. The rest of the day, the base would buzz with the story of how the colonel had tried to reprimand a 3-star general. But for Thorne, the silence was already deafening.